Beginnings, 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 beginnings. That was a quote by architect Luke Hahn, who began every one of his lectures in that way. And really, in terms of beginnings, the idea is the genesis of the thought process. And that's why when I sketch in the spirit, as I say, because I really just start with a piece of paper and just start sketching. And they're sketches that aren't necessarily recognizable to someone else, but I use those as discovering space. So I don't think about when I'm going to sketch, I just start sketching. And then of that, I kind of deduce from that or extract from that an architectural plan, put it back into sketch form, experiment with space, all by hand. Callahan Studios, Soul Space, plus 361 experience, designing for the art of participation. It's a mouthful, but it really describes in a very succinct way, ironically enough, the breadth and depth of what we do. The idea of a room being designed kind of 360 or like a giant hug, that's something you could not replicate in a VR virtual reality kind of experience or experience the same on your phone. So what we're about is partnering with companies that are really looking for how do we do the next big thing, because people are choosing to look at private experience on their phones, on their iPads, on their computers, on the VR goggles, instead of actually choosing to go to a real event with real people, rub elbows, talk and experience the sounds, the scents, the sights together as a group of people. Callahan Studios began in 1987 in the basement of my home in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we expanded fairly quickly to both Indianapolis and Orlando, and then eventually moved the studio west to Scottsdale, Arizona. We're really much more than just architects. We really approach projects from the inside out and the outside in at the same time. The reality is, how do you take a project and emphasize the technical aspects of it when you're designing to an experience? The soul space aspect of it really is about the soul of the space that's immeasurable. It's really very immersive in terms of how we think about the space in a multitude of ways as we're going through the design. So our unique design workshop process, where we're involved alongside of our clients, thinking through what they've done in the past, what they're doing in the present, more importantly, what they want to do in the future, all on paper in various different media forms so that they can be challenged and understand that they may want to do things in the future that they don't even know they're going to be doing. That's the difference between designing for flexibility, which is maybe looking a year out, as opposed to designing for adaptability, which is 10 years from now, we don't have a clue. How do you design for adaptability? It can certainly be done. But in terms of our process, we're really wanting to work with clients who really want participation, want involvement, want kind of intimacy in terms of an assembly space, which is unique. Grace Church, Indianapolis, was renovated in 2007 and 8, and we began that process in 2003 with a master plan that initially was a 5,000 seat church. And the client kept asking the question of what is the limit of intimacy and connectedness in worship. My answer was, for 2,000 years, the Roman Catholics haven't been building anything larger than 1,200 seats. And for most of those 2,000 years, it's been without electricity. So the client was like, well, that means we can't build anything over 1,200 seats. And no, really, our process together showed that once you get beyond 1,200 seats, which eventually we built a 1,600 seater, then you start leveraging technology to help you regain and maintain that intimacy and connectedness in worship. So the cliche of there's no bad seat in the house certainly works here, no matter what the experience is and what the artistic performance is, because you're really part of the whole process, no matter where you're seated in the room. And at 1,600 seats, you're closer to the platform than most 800 seat rooms. So as we like to say, physics always win, and our eyes and ears are at the same level. So if we can see, we can hear. And if we can see and we can hear, we can participate all the way through our soul. And that's the idea of soul space, is that it's really about what kind of experience do I have when I'm here present, live in the moment at the artistic event, as opposed to watching it on my VR goggles or my screen or my iPad. Because that's really the key to having participation in the ultimate sense, is I want to come. I want to be here live. I want to participate. And that gets people off their couches and from behind their screens and part of the process in terms of just the whole artistic experience. We really were involved together in producing something that's never been done before in terms of a zero-level platform, isodomal terraced, 1,600-seater that's really designed like a giant hug. And it's a very participatory space. Grace immediately began working on the next new campus, which is in Fishers, Indiana, just east there, about 20 miles. And that project was just completed in the fall of 2016. The Fishers project was interesting and challenging because it was 800 seat capacity, which was half the seating capacity of the Grace Noblesville project in 2008. So we had to keep the same kind of feeling of connectedness and intimacy in a smaller environment, which you think would be much easier, but actually was kind of more of a challenge because the platform is all the same size as the 1,600-seater. So it was a real challenge to kind of go through the process in a unique way to be able to make it seem like it was the same as the Noblesville campus, but unique and different unto itself. There's such a fine line between performance and participation, but it has tremendous differences in the actual outcome of the experience. So the idea of connectedness and intimacy and participation is all about the body language of the environment. Not looking all at the same spot, but looking across the room at various different angles, seeing different things during the experience of the art itself. In terms of the scope of spaces, we've designed spaces as large as 300,000 seats all the way down to 30 seats. And it's interesting, but the design process and the design approach for the scale of those projects is not different. The Salt Lake City project was for the American International School of Utah, and it was unique because it was a 1,200-seat auditorium in a former bowling alley. So we had many challenges with respect to the building code and seismic design, but the greater challenge was how to create a participatory environment in a limited height space. We're sitting in the 800-seat room at Risen Savior Lutheran Church, North Building Contemporary Worship Center. This building was completed from the ground up, brand new building in 2021. And the pastor, during the interview process, toured Grace Fishers during a worship service, and the pastor was speechless for about 5 minutes. And he said, "Can we have the same thing with a more liturgical expression?" So behind me are the stone walls flanking the sides of the center screen. Were meant to evoke the kind of historical nature or the ancient nature of the Christian faith, and lit in a way that really makes it seem much deeper than it is. The Risen Savior statue was custom commissioned, and the center screen in the room was really the focus for graphics, and the screens off to the side of the room are for IMAG, because the way the zero-level room is laid out in this particular layout with 800 seats is the furthest seat away is 60 feet. So it's a very intimate setting. When you have the zero-level platform, and then you have the terracing of the seating which rises from there or is recessed from there, you can be seated anywhere in the room, and it's just phenomenal. In terms of feeling connected and intimate, it feels like a participatory experience as opposed to a performative experience. This particular room has RGBW house lighting. The whole room changes color, not just the theatrical lights that are on the platform, so that everybody feels like we're all in. Our forte is in natural room acoustics. So that means before you plug in electricity. I always tell clients, when you mess up on acoustics, you throw away, in no particular order, your schedule, your wallet, and your expectations, because you're at -40 trying to get to zero, and nobody's ever going to be happy. That's why I really enjoy new spaces as opposed to existing spaces, because in new spaces you can start at 100, and the client can do all kinds of things they never thought possible. So our focus is really on the natural acoustics of the space, and my famous 11th commandment is, "Thou shalt not have 4 parallel walls, 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 walls." Or I tell people, look, in less than 3 seconds, I'm going to describe for you what the acoustics are like and everything you need to know about natural acoustics in a space. And I tell people we're going to say out loud the sound of my voice 3 times. And we say the sound of my voice, the sound of my voice, and the sound of my voice. And if you do that, you'll experience what that's like. It's the matter of the natural acoustics of the room in terms of the forms and the shapes and the surfaces. But once you have the natural acoustics set, then you can use audio, video, and lighting technology to enhance and leverage that instead of trying to overcome bad natural acoustics. And therefore, it's a much more participatory environment because you're hearing other people engaged in the process, and the experience instead of just singularly experiencing it for yourself. So welcome to Callahan Studio Soul Space. We'd love to help you in terms of thinking through the realities of adaptable design and how to make it disappear in the background so it's all about the story as opposed to the attributes of the technical parts of the room.